apologies for that. It's not very ASSAP, but yeah, Christian's organised a very special evening for us tonight. Christian, would you like to explain this unique experience that ASSAP is going through today?
Oh yes, so basically you have to bear in mind, so ASSAP, we've been doing this for 4 years as our, we kind of, it obviously grew out of the webinars back in 2020, during the days of COVID, perhaps a word we're not allowed to say anymore, but here we are, of course. This is the very first time, October the 31st, and the webinar have coincided on the same day. And I can imagine that many of our members who may well be today with us. Many of us might be at talks, many of us are going out trick-or-treating with the kids, many have got their own events going on, so today's participants might be a little bit less, and I completely understand why. So the idea is let's open this up to everyone, let's put the link out for the Zoom chat onto the Facebook page. Let everyone come and join us. Find out what we're all about. Come and enjoy our webinars that we do on a weekly basis, and come and have some fun. Learn about the people behind ASSAP and the talks that we do on a regular basis. This is normally part of the ASSAP membership that you people can come along to. You can come and engage in the talks. You can engage with a question and answer session, as well as get to talk to the presenters live here as part of our web chats. And of course, normally they go up on YouTube, they go up on Rumble, they go on BitChute as well, that are very popular. It'll be just great to get as many people in as we possible as we can today, while everyone of course is mostly out there in the world enjoying themselves this Halloween. So thank you very much for joining us. We're also streaming out today for the first time on YouTube simultaneously. This is going out live to the world of the internet, so this will be a bit of fun, a bit different than we normally would, but thank you for joining us here tonight. This is our ASSAP webinar Halloween special, and we're going to be talking about something a little bit different than the usual spooky stuff, so bear with us and I'll let Caroline take over.
So I would like to introduce our guest speaker this evening. It's the lovely Kristian Lander, who is our technical genius, who gets together all of the ASSAP webinars, makes them look pretty, and posts them on YouTube for everybody to enjoy. Not only that, but Kristian is a filmmaker and has been a producer and host for a number of podcasts, including Our Curious World. He has an avid interest in the mysteries and the unexplained, and he's got a passion for the world of the offbeat and 14, leading with an insatiable curiosity that has a driving force since a very, very young age. He says he prefers Velma Dinkley and has a love of audio horror and thrillers. Lucky for us, he's been a member of ASSAP since 2011. He has produced seven, I'm surprised at that amount, seven presentations for us here at ASSAP. Thank you so much, Kristian. So this is number 8, I think, and he has been a speaker 4 times at our ASSAP wonderful conference that we host every year. He also has a regular slot with TNT, Today News Talk Radio, on Thursdays, in the peak hour of the Patrick Henningsy Show, and he writes content for current affairs and geopolitics for the 21st Century Wire. When time permits, he loves to research, produce content, and create travel video logs, and takes pictures of quirky lampposts. I think that's called lamppost porn, isn't it? Yeah, hashtag lamppost porn. So welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us on Halloween evening. And Kristian, over to you.
Yeah, the lamppost porn always gets a bit of a joke from everybody, a bit of a smile. It came, for a birthday treat a couple of years ago. My friend took me over to Stratford-upon-Avon, and in Stratford-upon-Avon, of course, the home of William Shakespeare, during World War II, what happened is they took down all the lampposts, obviously melted them down for ammunition, armour for vehicles, that kind of thing. So what happened is every city in the country donated a lamppost to the city. And if you've ever walked around Stratford, every lamppost looks very different, very unique. And when I noticed that, every time I go to a different city, I always take different pictures and the unique architecture of those places. It's pretty fun. So hence lamppost porn. So today, let me just share over my screen that I have waiting in the wings for our talk tonight. Is going to be World, Enough and Time. Now, I'm also trying out another funky little feature that you might see me in front of it. I'll see how that works. Now let's just put this on our presenter view, so that'll give me my notes over here, and hopefully you can see the front of the presentation over there. Let's make that full screen. Oh, going one ahead of time there. Let's go full screen there. So I trust that you can see that okay. Caroline, can you give me a heads up that that's okay?
Yeah, it looks perfect, thank you.
Fantastic, thank you very much for that feedback. So today, of course, it's Halloween, Samhain, All Hallows Eve. Thank you very much for joining us here tonight. Let's just skip ahead. So today we're going to be talking about World Enough in Time, tickling topics of time travel, and I hope that tickled the tongue somewhat. So where are we going to be going here? I mean, I guess for many people it conjures up lots of different topics. And what can time travel consist of? The truth is, time travel is actually one of my favourite topics. It's not one I've ever spoke about, but it's because I have a love of science fiction, and time travel is a frequent motif in stories as a technology, it's a spontaneous event, or a mechanism that often can go awry, causing chaos for the audience to get drawn in by. But time is a measure of a passage of experience relative to our moment, thought to be a linear direction, left to right, however you want to see it. We understand that as what has gone before, our past, what is here and now, our present, and what is to come, what is our potential, our future. And physicists understand time as a dimension. They call it the fourth dimension. But there are those thinkers out there now. Oh, my screen has gone off. Okay, that was rather odd. There are those who believe that time is happening simultaneously, and more on that in a moment. So let's embark on a journey through some quick essays, some feature stories, some curiosities, and delve into some anecdotes as we chase down the many rabbit holes. And are unsure of where we're going to end up, or perhaps more fittingly, when we will end up. So let's dabble in lots of different topics. So, whenever the topic of time travel comes up, especially among friends, one question is inevitable, and it'd be great if you could pop it in the group chat down there or in the comments below, is that if you could go anywhere in time, or anywhen in time, should we say, where and when would you go? Where would you choose to go? So, would you witness perhaps the construction of Stonehenge? Those massive stones that were carried, allegedly by giants from Wales or now Scotland, to the plains of Wiltshire. Scotland, of course, so Stonehenge is, of course, perhaps one of the world's most iconic prehistoric monuments. It's mystified experts for thousands of years. Its origins, its purpose, and the staggering effort it must have taken to construct. Allegedly, it's been there for 4,500 years. As the lady said to me when I went down there, there's a ring of massive stones that aligns to solar events, suggesting it was an ancient astronomical calendar or a sacred ceremonial site. And that mystery, of course, is deepened now because we've now found out that the centre altar stone has come from a quarry in Scotland due to a paper that only came out just last month, actually, in Nature. And so what was the purpose of these Neolithic builders? They were going to take these massive multi-ton megaliths, drag them to the site in Salisbury for the purpose. It's the complexity, the precision, the layout. There's lots of people wondering what on earth was going on, what was in their mind back then. So would Stonehenge be a place that you would want to go? Because it is an awe-inspiring testament to the ingenuity, and it now has a lingering enigma. Of course, it's been a place where many people like to go. Of course, the Druids, they go there at the summer solstice and the winter solstice. But would this be a place where you would want to go to find out what happened? Perhaps you would go to the Library of Alexandria. It stands as one of the world's most captivating lost wonders. It's a beacon of knowledge as it once was in ancient Egypt under the Ptolemaic dynasty. It was around 3rd century BCE. So mariners across all the seas brought their tales to their halls. So it's a library of history. Allegedly, they contained hundreds of thousands of scrolls covering science, philosophy, literature, drawing scholars from across the Mediterranean and beyond. And the mystery, of course, is its sudden disappearance. Some accounts say it was Julius Caesar's fire in 48 BCE. Others say it was down to perhaps political or religious upheavals. But the exact size, scope, and specific content of that collection, of course, is entirely unknown, leaving scholars only to speculate about what really was in the legendary minds of Aristotle, Homer, or the other civilizations that may have indeed left their records there. So this library, if you were to go back in time as an option, would you go here? Would you try and save those documents? Would you wish to study them at the height of its collection? Or perhaps you would go even further back. What about 56 million years ago? To the mysterious blip in time known as the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum. So this was a period that lasted 200,000 years. So about the period of time of humanity in our current guise. There's a recorded rise in oxygen and carbon in the atmosphere around this time that's led some to speculate that, in fact, we may have had an ancient, forgotten industrial civilization. It's called the Silurian epoch. That means, yes, perhaps lizards were there building coal-powered power stations, if I can get that off my tongue. Or perhaps you would go for something a bit more modern, but no less enigmatic. Operation High Jump in 1946, when Admiral Byrd left and led an entire armada, complete with an aircraft carrier, battleships, a submarine, to Antarctica on a science mission to map the circumference and basically place an American flag in as many places as possible because it was at that point unclaimed. Yet they limped back 40 days later, having lost much of the flotilla due to an alleged conflict. Sparked rumours, and of course those rumours still persist today, that they encountered secret Nazi bases, where they are blonde-haired, mysterious Arianis, as they were dubbed. It was only a matter of months after this, the Antarctic Treaty was signed, and no one can go there unless under scientific reasons, and it is regionally divided between 12 different nations, and unless you've got permission, you cannot go there. It is a no-go zone. So, a mystery to find out the truth? Would you perhaps travel to find out what really happened to Admiral Byrd's armada? Or perhaps something more personal. The desire to time travel, a chance to see your parents perhaps, to go back and see events and witness things in your life, perhaps also make changes. Now, time quake and time breaks. So we've all seen in movies and TV shows how they handle time travel. Crossing timelines, crossovers, rewriting of histories. But it's fascinating because time travel actually has serious complications. One small change could potentially fracture reality itself. And this is going back. So going back in time is not generally recommended and is not thought to occur by science. Unless, of course, your actions are already an inherent part of the timeline. For example, one story suggests, of course, what if you turned out to be your own grandfather, which stretches the limits of the mind perhaps so you could wrap around them. Now imagine you go back in time and save someone crossing the road perhaps, and that single act alters the course of their life. Now they go on to marry someone they wouldn't have. They make actions and they make decisions that ripple outwards, affecting other people's lives in unexpected ways. What if those changes ultimately prevent your own birth? How did you go back and make the time machine? How did you go back and make the change if you were never born? And that is the essence of the time paradox, and is why time travel is such a tricky concept to manage. So, but of course, as the Doctor says, it all gets a bit wibbly-wobbly. Flexible, bendable, and it's the second time I've used that picture in a presentation. So let's just go with the flow of time. Let's get a bit of science here, because we are a science-orientated organisation here, so it's worthy that I put this in here before we go where we're going to go with our presentation tonight. So the flow of time is crucial to all of our devices, our observations and measurements of the universe, the idea that all of time is perhaps malleable. We have the theory of relativity. According to Einstein's theory of relativity, time is not fixed. It's not a linear path like we usually would think. Instead, it can stretch and it can bend based on speed and gravity. And this means to different observers, they experience time differently. You also have what's called the block universe theory. So some scientists propose that the past, the present, and the future actually all exist in a block of time, and that all points of space exist simultaneously. So from this perspective, time is seen to be more of a landscape that we move through rather than the flowing river of relativity. But quantum mechanics, of course, throws that into a bit of chaos. Particles exist in multiple states at once until they're observed, which leads some to wonder whether time itself may be non-linear and simultaneous and spontaneous in nature. Of course, those who investigate the paranormal may be fully aware of spontaneous cases that happen. But in summary, while we see our everyday experience as linear, some of these theories lead that time could coexist all up and down our time. So what could affect time? So it was the question I put out there to the internet. I had a bit of Google on this, and I spoke to a chap over at the Notts Trent University, and he says to me, if you're going to talk about time, you have to talk about light and electricity. And I was like, okay. So I did that. So how do light and electricity affect time? They don't directly affect it, but they do in a fundamental sense. They influence it because they measure it and how we perceive it. So according to the theory of relativity, time is affected by speed and gravity. So for example, as light travels at a constant speed, when objects approach that speed, time dilation occurs, and so time effectively for one of them slows down, and the phenomenon is the relationship between space and time. It means that light itself alters the nature of time. Electricity, on the other hand, plays a crucial role in how we measure time. Electrical signals and circuits are vital to our atomic clocks. They are incredibly precise in our timekeeping, as is magnetism that is closely tied into electricity. And this also contributes to our understanding of time by influencing motion and electromagnetic fields. And as such, a magnet can induce electric currents, which is the basis of most time measuring systems. So in summary, while light and electricity help us measure and understand time more accurately, they do not fundamentally change the flow of time. And I was told to make a quick mention about GPS satellites, in fact, the Baidu satellites that we use every day for measuring. Our devices here track our positions, as you know. But as satellites are at different heights, and we're in different positions on Earth, it takes the distance between ourselves and the satellite has to be tracked slightly differently. And of course, you have time dilation between every different layer and level of satellites in space. So, let's dive into the vortex. Let's make this more interesting. Let's make this more paranormal for what we're all here for. So, potential time travelers who have gone against the established rules. So, let's check out this chap. So this is a clip you're probably going to be really familiar with. So I went back to some of my early blogs when I was the Paranormal Network and I was blogging back in 2010. So I contacted this guy back in 2010. I wrote it on my blog and I contacted him. So I was able to have a look at this. So there's a chap called George Clark. He lived in Belfast and he had bought in 2009 the Charlie Chaplin collection of DVDs, and he then put a video out to the internet in the March of 2010 saying, hey, there's a clip on here that's really interesting, and for the sake of fair use, he's got an 8-minute video on the internet. I've created a 1-minute clip of that about the context of that. Hopefully you'll be able to hear this okay.
In the Charlie Chaplin film The Circus.
If you can't, let me know.
I've screened this to about 100 people at the film festival that I run here in Belfast, and nobody can give me an explanation for what you're about to see. I've watched this footage myself for probably well over a year now. I bought it whenever I bought the whole box set. And being a filmmaker, I tend to watch a lot of the extras and a lot of the making ofs and things like that. In 1928, and a certain scene happened just in the opening of it where I was kind of stumped at what I saw, and I kept winding it back, playing it, winding it back, playing it, and I couldn't explain this.
Now one more time, I think it should be fine. Okay, so let's just minimize that again. Wonder how I come out of that. Okay, so how do I come out of that? Okay, so there we are. So that was Charlie Chaplin's The Circus opening. So what we were watching there is one of the extras for the film, The Circus. So on the recorded film, it's the opening night at the cinema. As a person dressed as a woman. She's very heavy set, actually. In fact, she looks more like a man in women's clothing, which is rather odd, of course, of the time. Her hand size, the legs, which is curious. So whatever it is that she's holding, she looks like, and it indeed looks like she's talking into a modern mobile phone. But of course, this is 1928. That was certainly not the case. So that is one example of a time traveller that sits out there. And we're going to talk about them again in a second.
Charlie Chaplin film, The Circus.
We don't need to talk to you again. Let's just skip that forward. And so we have this chap here. So let's make this full screen once more. And 1 second. And make it full screen once more so you can see it fully. So on the Brownlow Pioneer Museum, I've got the link below you as well. You can go to that, have a look at this. So this image is quite famous because of this. It appears to be a man wearing very modern sunglasses. And he obviously has the M on his chest. He stands out as quite a distinct character on here. And he looks to be holding a portable compact camera as well. The picture is certainly genuine. So borrowing a little text from the page, as noticed, this is from an exhibit called Their Past Lives Here. from Bralone Pioneer. It was actually made public in 2004 in a physical capacity, and then was put online in February 2010. And the potential time traveler was noticed on a website called FARC, which is basically a news aggregator website. It's very popular, and then it became popular on the message board system over on Above Top Secret. Then, of course, since that point, the story has passed up. It has done the rounds, and people are probably very familiar with this. But this guy sure does look out of place. So there's this chap here, Andrew Carlson, a very popular chap. So the year is 2003. The story is this. So the story is the FBI arrested a 44-year-old chap called Andrew Carlson on suspicion of insider trading. In just 2 weeks, it turns out that Carlson had made 126 consecutive high-risk, profitable trades, turning in an investment of $800 into a $350 million portfolio. So you can imagine this caught the attention of the Security and Exchange Commission, the SEC, and they arrested him for insider trading, which is considered illegal, unless you're a banker or a politician, of course. Who they immediately launched an investigation. Now, normally, when someone is accused of insider trading, they deny it. But after a 4-hour interrogation, Carlson offered an explanation that no one expected, is that he claimed to be a time traveller who had travelled through time 250 years from the future, from the year 2256, with a knowledge of high-risk stock trades. And in a videotaped confession, Carlson admits that he couldn't resist the temptation to make more trades than he first intended to, and he got carried away, and that's why he got caught. Now, the SEC didn't believe this, of course. They insisted the only way he could ever have pulled this off is through insider trading, and intending to keep him held custody until he revealed his sources. He refused to give up any names, he stuck to his story, and now he was facing jail time. But Carlson made an interesting offer. In exchange for a lighter sentence and to be given back his time machine to get out of the room, he was willing to give up the cure for AIDS and the location of Osama bin Laden. And all he needed to do was to go back to his time machine and his own time. And Carlson's bail was placed at $1 million, and he was placed in holding awaiting trial. With no family, no friends, now all his money gone. An interesting story that happened is that a person, his £1 million bail was settled. An identity of an individual came in, paid the bounty, and then the mystery man disappeared, never to be seen from and heard again. Our next time travel chap is Sergei. Now, I'm going to have struggle saying this, because Poromaranko, I struggled to say this in all the times I tested this. But he has an interesting story that has actually only just been solved. And I'm going to take you through what the story is. In 2006, an old-fashioned gentleman with a film camera appeared on the streets of Kiev, and he was asking passers-by where he was and what year it was. Now, a police officer picked him up and dealt with him, as it was an unusual case. He recorded the details of the only document that the visitor had on him, and that document was this one here. So, Poromaranko, Sergei Valentinovich, see, I told you I was going to have struggle to say that. It says he was born in 1932, but most intriguingly, he possessed a Soviet document from the 1950s. It's called a Commissar card, which stated he was indeed only 25 years old. And since the situation was strange and Sergei was not feeling well, he decided to be picked up and be taken to a private clinic where he was introduced to a psychologist that the police officer knew. So during the first videotaped appointment with the psychologist, Sergei purports that his last memory is of a flying saucer, which he attempted to photograph with his camera, and that's when he suddenly found himself in this new, unfamiliar environment. So they developed the film from the camera and gave the doctor several photographs of Sergei from the past and his girlfriend, as well as a picture of the UFO. So after the patient's second appointment, after Sergei had a second appointment with him, he was then shown those finished photographs. And Poromaranko left the office, entered his room, entered his dormitory, and then disappeared. Now, the district police officer who handled the case in 2006 found a wanted poster for Sergei Poromaranko dated in 1978, which stated that he left home with a camera and disappeared. In addition, he was given an opportunity to listen to archival audio recording from 1960, which captured an interview with Sergei Poromaranko on a Kiev radio station, which he describes the future that he had visited. So they found a friend of this gentleman who, in the past, had received a letter from Poromaranko with a photograph. And on this presented photograph is a picture of an aged Sergei, and standing in front on the shore of a hydro park, And behind him, there's a number of skyscrapers, an embankment of Paheshki Hill, and which is not seen in modern Kiev, which of course, on the back of this picture, it says, "I'm fine, I am going to try and come back." Now, the plot thickens when the authorities investigated and discovered records of a man, indeed called Sergei. Poromaranko had indeed gone missing in 1958, and they tracked down his former girlfriend, now in her 70s, who recognised herself as the woman in those photographs with him. And she confirmed that Poromaranko had disappeared for 2 years before reappearing in the 1950s. And she also had received a photograph that later appeared to show him as an older man, allegedly taken again in 2050. There's actually a whole documentary about this chap. It's actually a Russian documentary. It's interesting to worth watching. It's actually attached. It contains a lot of recreated scenes of this this matter. Definitely worth watching. There's subtitles to it. I'm not going to play it here, but definitely an interesting thing. So let's just recap ourselves through those time travellers, because they certainly are ones that tickle the mind and have held the news stories. Whenever you type in time travellers into Google or any search functions, you will find these stories. So let's revisit the circus. So my thoughts are with this is that, in a true sight, it's actually truly interesting. It really is. I mean, the grip on that mobile phone, with those really large hands, it does look like a modern-day smartphone. It does appear to have a black back that most people are quite familiar with. Like, I grab my phone, and it looks very much about the same size as that. But of course, in 1928, how on earth do they get a signal? And skeptics highlight, of course, and rightfully so, this could in fact be just a compact ear trumpet designed to amplify the environmental sound. Possibly. There was actually primitive walkie-talkies around that time that may have been what it is, and she may just have been shouting to someone who's slightly off camera. But no, the clip is certainly no hoax. It's real, it's a genuine footage, shot as extras, B footage really, of the opening of the Charlie Chaplin movie back in 1928. But of course, it didn't really go noticed until, of course, George made his famous video that actually now has more than 7 million views on it. I mean, what are your views about that? But let's skip to the next one. So we have this chap, and I didn't cover him because his story is quite a complex one, but it's worth covering in our recap. Perhaps of all the time travellers out there, this chap perhaps is the most famous. So John Titor, he had, wherever my notes are, they're not in the right order, which is not good. Let's just skip back up there. There we go. So the case of John Titor is this. So back in the early 2000s, a figure emerged online claiming to be a time traveller from 2036, and he went by the name of John Titor. He made contact in 1998 via sending a fax to Art Bell of Coast to Coast. But it wasn't until 2000 that he reappeared again, and then again in 2001, when he gained kind of a widespread recognition. He was sending faxes of details, because Art Bell had challenged him to say, hey, if you're a time traveller, can you prove it? So then he started posting and replying again 2 years later, and then a year later, about an intricate narrative about time travel and a bleak future for humanity. So according to Titor, he claimed that he was a soldier from 2036. He allegedly worked for the US government. He was sent back in time to 1975 to retrieve a computer, an IBM 5100, which is an early portable computer. And the reason for this is that he was sent back to get this computer because it has technology and software on it that allows him to debug and fix a legacy computer system that is going to cause a problem in 2036, very similar to Y2K. And the truth is, it's actually a very genuine problem that is going to affect Unix systems in 2036. But after his mission, he says that he hung around a while and stopped around the year 2000 for personal reasons, because he wanted to use the opportunity to warn the humanity of this particular timeline, where he became very accustomed of the impending disasters that we were going to face. He described that there was going to be a second American Civil War beginning in 2005, as well as a political polarization between rural and urban populations. He said that there potentially could be a catastrophic nuclear exchange with Russia in 2015, leading to the death of millions. And he claimed that America would in fact be split and fractured into 5 multiple regions, and that society would greatly change and become a more agrarian, a more decentralized system. And the way that time travel worked according to John Titor, he actually not only sent back a detailed description of how it worked, he sent the instruction manual to Coast and posted on the forums back then. So in detail, they were actually quite good. You actually go back and look at the PDFs now about how they actually work. They talk about rotating microsingularities, how it was invented by General Electric in 2013. So when challenged to present the specifications, he did. He posted multiple images, but multiple pages of that instruction manual. He also spoke about a multiverse, that every time he goes back in time, that effectively a fracture happens and that an alternative timeline then begins. So on this Earth, the one that he potentially is going to face in the future, he's trying to fix, and he left a number of messages before he went away. Now let's skip back down to my notes where I caught back up with that story. So my notes here make sense. So the creator of this John Titor story has allegedly been identified. I would say it's never really been identified, but it has been characterized as a person, and that person is a guy called Larry Harbour, who's an entertainment lawyer from Florida, and he claims to represent the family of that John Titor character. And Harbour's brother, a chap called John Harbour, he's a computer scientist who many believe is the creator of the narrative, and suggesting that the entire story, in fact, is an elaborate hoax, and is in fact at the beginning of an alternate reality game, which is kind of a game where it kind of affects the real world. And the reason they say this is because they took out copyright licensing on the name and also the publishing rights of all the books, what have come afterwards. So although Larry and John have never been explicitly admitted that they've been responsible for all this, they did have intricate knowledge of the IBM computer that's at the basis of his story, and they do believe that he authored the posts. But there's no concrete proof has ever come forward that he is definitively the person behind the Titor character. The story remains, it's an internet mystery. Is it a mix of hoax? Is it a mix of ARG elements? Or a deliberate exercise of, science fiction put into the real world? But like I said, he did go on to explain that the IBM PCs do have an algorithm code that sits below the main code that has the ability to contact mainframes, and because of this, it allows them to reboot and reassign code to restart systems to avoid the problem they're going to face in 2036. It's interesting because IBM didn't know this, or they didn't have this publicly until 2013. So this was real information being presented to the public in 2001 that IBM didn't publicly disclose actually really existed. So potentially, if it really was a case of a hoax, how was the information known? There's quite a few websites, of course, that are out there about John Titor. JohnTitor.com, of course, is the key source where I found much of this information. He posted a final recorded messages, and it came in the form of a song. And it says that, I will be proven right once this song is found. And there's a correspondence with a chap called Oliver Williams, who is the owner of the John Titor website. Although this song title is vague and the contents are vague, but it's a really interesting story. Definitely go and check out to find out about the mystique of this character. There's a bit of a blend between fact and fiction in internet lore. But there are fans and investigators of both sides about the identity of this particular character. So let's revisit this time-travelling hipster then, the guy who's on the bridge, the guy with the sunglasses, the guy with the M on his chest. So on the short description of what there is on the Bralore Pioneer Museum, it's from British Columbia, Canada. The image, of course, is available on their online exhibit that I posted earlier. The photo is authentic. It's correct to the time that it was taken. There was an error level analysis done in 2011 that it was not been digitally tampered with, but the striking chap in that picture does look out of place compared to the other reporters who were there and the public gathered to take a picture of what used to be a flooded zone that now has finally been repaired. So it's argued, though, of course, the jersey he's wearing, the M actually stands for the Montreal Maroons journey, or it could be the Marines, because they were a NHL hockey team in 1938, under sunglasses with side covers, which I've actually got a pair myself, in 1940 were apparently available. The compact camera in his hands is unusual, because of course the popular press cameras, if you've ever seen cameras even as far up as the 1970s, they had the massive bulbs with them at the side with a massive flash at the top. To have a compact camera that small in 1940, extraordinarily rare. But so often it's put forward as a case of someone who looks really interesting, but does sit in the same era as something that perhaps is not a time traveller. And the Andrew Carlson story, I think this is a really fantastic story. Of course, it contains all the elements that give a texture a true story. But it actually comes from a satirical newspaper. It comes from the World Weekly News, which we don't get in the UK, which is really disappointing. But what happened is the Yahoo News perhaps hadn't fact-checked it, and they covered the story as if it was real. And then what happened is multiple news websites then covered the story as well, making it real. But more than 20 years later, it is most frequently referenced as the most modern urban myth of time travel. It's a fascinating story because, I mean, I think even at the time, I think even I shared it, I thought it was quite a genuine story back in the February of, 2006, yes. So people thought that was a genuine case because of the widespread coverage it got. And Sergei Poromaranko. So, however you do say that. So this is a wonderful, intricate case. Now, I did read through this, I watched that documentary, and how well this was put together as a documentary, as a project, as a kind of, I don't know, one of those things that you do on the internet to become popular. And it's taken from 2006 to 2024 to prove that it didn't happen in the way that it was presented. So it took actually a bunch of internet sleuths from a website called Fern Flower, and I highly recommend everyone, as part of ASSAP and beyond, check out this website. They cover paranormal and anomalous cases, and they try and source back everything back to its earliest possible incarnation of data and information, almost like an ASSAP of Russia. So, and they kept tabs on this guy all the way through, along with a YouTuber called Ray Scott. The reconstruction documentary that I clipped on earlier draws criticism because, of course, it might be part of the deception itself. In the records, so this is a true case. It really did happen in 2006. A police officer did take him and so on. The calendar that he was taken in on at the time dates him as a different day. So the police officer, in his own statement, says it was a Tuesday, the 23rd, in 2006. There was a calendar that took him in as being on a Sunday on April 23rd, 2006. It says that on his birth card, it says he was born on June 17th, 1932, but on his commissal card, it's a different date. There's also the type of camera that was used by Poromaranko. There's a guy called Vadim, a photographer. He says that the type of camera film that he used is called Sfema, which was discontinued in 1970. But in fact, you could still buy this in 1990, which meant perhaps if you would look around car boots, look around any private camera collectors, you might still be able to get this in a sealed pack and use it and make it look like it was much older than it was. And there was the recording that allegedly was made in 1960, and if you go through it, the audio is far too clean for an audio file to have existed from that time to now. And of course, the picture that I'm actually showing you up on screen right now is allegedly the picture taken from 2050 that he sent back to his girlfriend in the 1970s. Those skyscrapers in the background are actually the same skyscrapers that are actually flipped horizontal, and they're kind of photoshopped left and right next to each other, which shows the picture actually is a kind of Photoshop job. And perhaps is the most egregious use of that terrible mustache that he's got on there. And he doesn't look that much older at all. So someone went to a lot of effort to make this as elaborate as possible. And for an internet hoax to last more than 20 years, very, very good show to you, I've got to say. And I think he got away with it too if it wasn't for those meddling kids on the internet and their dog, as they say. But there's this story here. So moving our way from time travelers who have made themselves famous over the internet, this is an interesting one. So do time travelers attend sporting events? So I think any would-be time traveler might want to keep themselves incognito, kind of a blend into the visiting time and not disturb the timeline through fears of changes they might make. You know, attending legendary sporting events, though, could be a safe bet. So seeing perhaps England raise the World Cup in 1966, watching Tony Hawk land his 900 for the first time in competition. But an inconspicuous attendee to the Mike Tyson and Peter Kenneally fight from 1995 at the MGM Grand. And the very first 3 seconds of this video that I will show there's a person with a hard camera right opposite the ring. It's worth taking a look at. So let's just play this.
D'Amato once told him your greatest asset can become your greatest weakness.
So I'm not sure if you saw that. There's a person in the background there holding what appears to be a mobile phone. And this is actually the full fight taken from Mike Tyson, Peter McNeely in 1995. Let's just show
D'Amato once told him your greatest asset can become your greatest weakness.
An interesting little video, certainly is. So this person is right opposite the hard cam with a potential smartphone and appears to be recording the bout for their own prosperity. For I was there, Mike Tyson in his prime, the animal in the top 3 of the world, and you've got this camera that appears to have, 3 lenses, something you're quite familiar with if you're looking at, say, a modern iPhone that has that 3 kind of cameras looking on the back on the 3 lenses. But this is 1995, and for those who were there, of course, camcorders were bulky beasts. They used to record to DV magnetic tapes, and skeptics point to the fact that this could well be a different camera. And I'll have a picture of that in a second. Let's just pause this. Skip to the next picture. There we go. So they think this is what this person is holding. So the resolution and size of the video makes it a bit indeterminate, of course. But Casio certainly had 3 cameras that looked very similar to this. And this is what it's been commonly ascribed to being, is that there's a Casio QV, QV100 and a Logitech Photoman, and these were widely available. They used a TFT screen on the back, but they were extraordinarily expensive. So, but would you take it to the MGM ground to watch Mike Tyson in a world title fight? If you have the funds to pay for all these cameras at that time, you might well do that. And of course they are using it in the same way that we use a mobile phone today. So, our next chapter for time travellers. Let's look at spoilers from the future. This is something I came to be aware of, and was the reason why I put this kind of presentation together a couple of weeks ago, is that I was on TikTok, if you could believe such a thing, and I followed a couple of threads, and I found an incredible amount of people claiming that they are from the future, or they have the ability to jump to the future. And then I was looking at the amount of views that these people get, and these people are making some serious banking money. So, I'm not going to link to them, but you can see that their channels are here and they're posted. So, and I'm just going to highlight 3 of them, really. So, Time Voyaging claims that they have an apocalyptic view of the future. They claim that there's the apocalypse is coming, and there's a hugely destructive being who's in the future called Awaza, who lives underground. They set up to destroy humanity, as all we know it, and they have come back in time, and they've got their own popular account that has 2.8 million followers, believe it or not. There's a person called UNESCO Brevenetti, who claims that he's from the year 2027. He's warning people about human extinction. And they're also they're filming solo adventures, filming abandoned places, buildings and cars all around Spain. And this person has 7.6 million followers and more than 50 million likes. And there's another time traveller on TikTok as well, who goes by the name of Time Traveller 2082, and as the name suggests, he comes from 2082. And he also has ominous predictions online about the future of where technology is going. But he also claims to take pictures. He claims that he jumps to the future, takes pictures, videos, then brings them back to upload them to social media, to TikTok, to YouTube and to Facebook, to show what the future is going to be like for us. Spoilers from the future. And then we have this topic. Now, as I said, this is tickling topics of time travel. So, as I did research for this and bringing some notes together, in the comments, a frequent mention, what I saw, whenever I looked at time travel topics, I would always see Mandela effect. And it wasn't really something I was going to cover, because of course, perhaps it's worthy of a presentation in and of its own. But there's a twisted element to this, which is about time. So I thought, hey, I'll throw this in there, just to throw it for completion's purposes. So let's give you an overview. So proponents claim that their memory and history are out of synchronization. There are those who claim that history and the details are no longer depicted in the way that they are remembered. Somehow that history has been changed. So the term Mandela effect was first came to be in 2009 by Fiona Broom, who she created a website to detail her observation of a phenomenon. Broom was at a conference, she said, talking to other people about how she remembered the tragedy of the South African president Nelson Mandela, who died, to her perception, in a South African prison in 1980. However, Nelson Mandela didn't die in the 1980s. In a prison, he died in 2013. And as Broom began to talk to other people about her memories, she learned at the conference that she wasn't alone, and other people remembered seeing news coverage of his death, as well as the speech by his widow. So Broom was surprised how such a number of people could remember the same identical event to a detail that never happened, and then encouraged to write a book by a publisher, and then she began her website called The Mandela Effect, where she now basically logs other incidents like it. Now, this is when you have a large group of people on the internet, amplified by social media, who claim to remember various events differently about how it occurred. So if time travel is possible, one theory could be that it is someone going back in time, and then we're now creating different realities or altered memories leading to the Mandela effect. So this could mean that interactions with the past could cause a shift in collective memory. It's speculative, it has no scientific evidence, but in essence, while time travel could theoretically explain these discrepancies, did someone go back and step on the butterfly? Are we now in a different strand of time? Is there a deliberate attempt also by companies to go into their own archives to encourage media to cover up changes? This we all thought would be kind of crazy. But one example is this, is that if you watch Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, you probably remember the line, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" So mirror, mirror on the wall, and my recollection of this, is that when people would say mirror, mirror on the wall, I would say, when I was a teenager growing up, I kind of argued against that. I was a bit of a kind of rebel against that kind of a Disneyfication of the fairy tales that I had read. And I would say, hey, nowadays it's flipped. It would be like, when I was reading the books, it was magic mirror. How dare Disney say mirror, mirror? That's not how it is. That's the Disney version. However, the Disney version does say magic mirror. And the Mandela effect claims that, of course, it used to say mirror, mirror. So it's quite odd. So am I on a different timeline now? So what muddies this further is the fact that in 2012, with the support of Disney, there was this movie that did come out with Julia Roberts and Lily Collins, a live-action version of Snow White called Mirror, Mirror. So, of course, what happened here? So perhaps the Mandela effect is filling in for a different presentation here. I'm going to put that one on the shelf. I think it's interesting, but I don't generally put much stock in it. But what people do find is intriguing to watch. And then we have this topic. So it's time running parallel with the past, the present, and the future. And the fascinating case, of course, is the Dolderson poltergeist and messages. Now, these were first, of course, revealed in The Vertical Plane, authorised by Ken Webster and published in 1989. Now, due to its scarcity, first edition copies were around £1,000. In fact, when I googled them, because of course, if you went to the Seriously Strange this year and had the opportunity to speak to Deborah, of course, who was at the centre of this very case, and Dr. Paul Rogers, when I googled this while I was there, I indeed see copies going at £800, £900, but thankfully there was a second edition that I do physically have. It's available at about a tenner, so much better now. So, for those who aren't aware of this particular story, it's set really in 1984. It's what happened to the events of Ken and Deborah and others who became involved in a continuous movement of events with people from the 1500s. And astonishingly, it appears to be near real-time communication with individuals of that time. So the events centre around a cottage, or rather a small village, in 1984. Deborah, along with Ken, an economics teacher from Cheshire, who they were using a BBC microcomputer that was frequently cycled from the school to home on lots of different computers. It wasn't always the same one, but files were mysteriously appearing on the computer, addressed to them from an individual who first identified himself as LW, later Lucas, and they wrote in the form of Old English. And below are... Now, I did actually take a number of photographs, I haven't actually included here terribly, of that particular presentation. But so Lucas, as he first identified himself, stated that he could see the screen, he could see the surroundings, he could hear the people in the room, he identified the computer as a box of lights, and he initially was very wary of Deborah and Ken, and he was unsure of their intent. However, curiosity took over, and then an uncanny relationship, a kind of friendship, developed. So hundreds of messages, not just one or two, hundreds of messages were exchanged over the course of the following months, although Deborah and Ken remained very confused about the mechanism behind the communication. Lucas frequently commented on the clothing, the home decor. He compared the way they live is fit for a king. He claimed that he lived in the reign of King Henry and explained that from his perspective, the device that allowed him to speak out loud into the room, the words then appeared on the screen for them. And of course, this is 1984. This is long before the internet. Wi-Fi really wasn't around. Any kind of advanced communication networks weren't really implemented. And the BBC microcomputer has no storage. Everything has to be saved. It has to be saved on a physical disk. Yet those messages continue to appear in real time on the screen. So understandably, even to themselves, Deborah and Ken remained very sceptical, and they were in fear themselves, having now read the book, that they were being tricked. So strange occurrences compounded their doubts. There was footprints appear along the walls. There was messages that were scrawled on floors. Poltergeist-like phenomena began occurring. Chairs and furniture were found stacked in rooms. There was weird stacking occurring. Lucas described that the house that he had was made of a red brick, although Ken and Deborah's house was not. However, during later renovations, it was discovered the earlier structure of the cottage that they live in had indeed been found to have been made with red bricks. Deborah even described having a profound experience, having spent hours in Lucas's company over dinner in his time. Now, was this a dream or something more? The Society for Psychical Research then became involved. 2 investigators reportedly visited the home offering advice, how to keep logs, managing how to keep data. Meanwhile, in the 1500s, Lucas, or rather Thomas, his true name, was arrested. He was accused of engaging with unnatural forces, potentially witchcraft. A close friend of his began to speak to Deborah and Ken through the mysterious means, and he also admitted that he had a fear of what was happening. For Deborah and Ken, this was a time of immense stress, mental fatigue. They were racing against the clock to try and save someone who lived and died 400 years ago. So they were trying to prove not only that they weren't demonic, but they had powers beyond comprehension. But as the situation progressed, Lucas, now Thomas, revealed that he had been not just communicating with Deborah and Ken, he'd actually been talking to another entity who was referring to himself as, or themselves rather, as 2109, a new personality. And unlike Lucas and Thomas, this entity was cold, clinical, direct. 2109's messages were stark and foreboding. And again, messages continued in their hundreds for months. The poltergeist-like phenomena intensified. Deborah and Ken's mental health began to deteriorate under the strain of these events, and they began questioning even their own sanity. And 2109 advised them to contact a ufologist in their time, even providing them a phone number. And this investigator then became involved with the case. They spent many hours at the cottage, at the property, and secret messages began to be passed from the investigator at 2109 that they would put in an envelope, furthering Ken and Deborah's suspicions, as files were deleted that they then couldn't read, and prevented them from reading any contents. And 2109 also then warned them about uncovering Thomas's identity, because of course they had taken time to go to Oxford, they had taken time to go investigate the historical significance of the character they were allegedly talking to. So 2109 warned them about doing this, and all communications would cease if they did locate and name him. So the Donaldson's messages, they do represent an extraordinary case of things moving in sync across timelines. You know, both Lucas, Thomas, and Deborah are happening simultaneously. Their events are happening at the same time. Real-time communication between them? How is that happening? Is time, therefore, asynchronous between past, present, and future happening simultaneously? And Thomas, ever the careful note-taker in the book, claims that he has compiled a volume of work documenting all the information and hiding it somewhere for Ken and Deborah to find in the present. Potentially, it's at Oxford College, and that is where this volume is the mission of the Vertical Plane Research Group, who have an active Facebook page, a private page to go and check out. It's worth visiting them. Deborah Oakes is a very approachable person to talk to about the case that she experienced. So just 2 more chapters are going to make up our talk on the various aspects of time and time travel tonight. One of which is this, very, very quickly, a time slip story and a phantom scenery story. So imagine stepping into the moment, for a moment rather, into the past, where people, their clothing, the very air itself, the scents, the atmosphere, feel as real as your present surroundings. These experiences, coupled with phantom battle scenes, have been reported throughout history. One early disclosure, as a kind of event to me, I was out in a location called Linby. Linby is I call it the Fatian village because it's a small hamlet in Nottingham, just outside Hucknall, that has every kind of paranormal phenomenon having been reported there. It's a very interesting place, and when I first got involved with investigating the paranormal, it was the first place I went to. And Jo, she spoke to me and she gave me an account. It's not one I've discussed too often, but it's a worthy one, particularly when it comes to time travel and phantom scenery. So here we are for the inclusion for ASSAP. So she claimed that she was walking across the field between Limby and Papelwick along Robin Hood Way. It's a popular ramblers route, and it's a location where there's a number of other high strangeness encounters. Now, as she walked, she said that she glanced to her left, and there was a group of people gathered behind some shrubbery and a bush. And these three individuals, they were crouched low behind this area, and we were at this site when she was telling us this. She was walking me through this particular area where she showed me they were. She says, there was three gentlemen down here, and they were hiding, and they appeared to be dressed like Roundhead soldiers. They were hiding, but what they were hiding from, she says that she looked to her right, and there was a character who was on a horseback. He was wearing cavalier regalia. He had a sword and a scabbard fastened to his saddle harness. And when she looked back at the soldiers, she said that one of them looked up and they made eye contact, and then the whole scene vanished. So those glimpses across time raise fascinating questions. Could there be a natural phenomena at play here, perhaps a time bubble that kind of acts a bit like a looking glass into the past, visible perhaps when you have to stand in a precise location at the right moment? Perhaps there's a trigger for the phenomena, a right time of day, a state of mind, weather conditions, or even environmental alignments. So, such experiences do offer a clue to the mechanics behind hauntings. So when you look at like anniversary or recurring hauntings, there is the same kind of thing at work here. Is it a repeating reoccurrence of the same mechanics that go ahead making these things align perfectly, so you see the same thing, like almost a repeatability? But of course, when you go to actively trying to repeat the case, it doesn't happen. So this last kind of actually no, there are two more. Sorry, I lied to you, not by accident, not by intention. Sorry, but I wanted to talk to you a bit quickly about time tourism and science fiction. So might places in time be like tourist destinations? Victorian London, Rome at its height, Constantinople. Will our future generations be able to visit the past? But perhaps they don't have to visit in time for real. They could visit a recreation, a simulation. So VR technology is now astoundingly good, very, very high resolution. Our rendering engines like Unreal 5 are really close to real life. Visiting those spaces is already here. We're astoundingly close to this tech. So what I wanted to do was show you a 30-second clip or so of a popular video game series called Assassin's Creed. It's a game I used to play. It has an interesting in-game meta of the real world that I think we're moving towards. Where in-game you travel to different periods of recreated history to uncover mysteries and have adventures. Where perhaps, I think the game's take on this is that you're using DNA to synchronize with your past lives in order to figure out some kind of far-out concept to walk through an environment. But it's a worthwhile clip just to check out. This is the clip I made of this sequence.
Built by Abstergo Industries in the latter half of the 20th century, the Animus is a device that allows its users to extract and explore the embedded ancestral memories found in all human DNA. Early versions of the Animus limited its users by giving them access to the ancestral memories found in their own genes. More recent versions now allow people to investigate the memories found in any harvested strand of DNA, no matter its source. Because this genetic memory is fixed, users of the Animus are not free to interpret history in any way they see fit. Rather, they must synchronize with the genetic memory to ensure a more complete picture of the past. But full synchronization is not always possible, and many gaps often remain open. As one would expect with such advanced technology, operating an Animus is not always an easy task, and the long-term psychological effects can be profoundly disorienting or deadly. As is the case with most advanced technologies, the rewards often outweigh the risks of use. With all of human history now open to us, who wouldn't want to dig into the past and uncover its secrets? And how can this knowledge of the past help us solve the pressing problems of today? It's an interesting question. The Animus.
Let's mute that. Yeah, so I edited that down into a little clip. That's actually the person who writes the Assassin's Creed story, Darby McDevitt there. That's an interesting idea of the narrative direction. And we are pretty close to that. Could we be recreating the past environments in VR as a kind of time travel tourism and living, breathing environments that we can perhaps just go back in and experience and interact with?
The Animus.
Well, we don't want to play it again. Let's just skip to the next one. So this really is the final part. And it's a story about time travel and a paranormal investigation. Because does time travel affect paranormal investigations? And I wanted to share an anecdotal story that I had. I'll tell you about it. This is what happened. So for those who experiment with broken radios, so those who play around with Frank's boxes or similar tools, they have to accept the claims that what they are, if they are doing what they claim that they do, you have to accept that time travel is real. So if these devices are truly communicating with spirits in real time, it implies that time is being manipulated. So the picture here, if you're a paranormal investigator on the UK circuit, you might well recognise this as Tatton Hall. So I went here in 2011 with a group called Haunted Happenings and Compass Paranormal. And on my own blog, I've got this listed as a read-through. So while I was there, I was in the kitchen and dining room, came off the main hall, and I stumbled across this Frank's Box session being conducted by one of their investigators called Ross. He had a bunch of guests there who were all gathered around the table, and they were asking the usual questions. Are you there? Are you really there? Do you want us to go? Are you William, who doesn't like women? Why does James I keep coming to mind? So this radio was panning across frequencies and picking up fragments of words from different stations. And the group eagerly plucked out supposed answers from the static. So the situation became very awkward, as everyone was trying to make sense of these responses. They were interpreting these random words to match up with the questions that perhaps they had asked or someone else had, and no one could really agree on what was being said, and it led to lots of uncertain pauses. Now, without wanting to be rude, I joined them at the table. I wanted to observe what was happening here. I was fascinated. But as kind of logic dictated what I was looking at, as this radio was cycling through the stations, I noticed that there was a distinct operatic singer coming through. And intrigued as I began to count the stations until that person repeated. And I then repeated this observation several times. And I noticed there was 19 stations between each occurrence of it returning to that opera singer. This made me wonder, so is there a specific trigger to stimulate this phenomenon? What would be tied to, would it require a different state of mind? Would it require environmental alignments? Would any frequencies be mattered here? No. So the group's questions were becoming more and more absurd. Do you know you are dead? Do you know what year it is? What year did you die? Now at this point, I'm playing along a bit. I'm an observer. I kind of play a bit of an anthropologist in these cases. I don't wish to be rude. I try to get on with everyone. But I couldn't help but think. And then I says, wait a minute. If I was a spirit, damn it, be quiet. I'm trying to answer your question, and you keep talking over me. So then my urge to speak up became overwhelming, and I had to interrupt. And I said, let me get this straight. Are you seriously saying and believing that if a ghost is here, presumably is giving us the exact answers to the questions we're asking? And everyone's like, yes. Everyone's nodding. So everyone believes here that the ghosts respond to the question we're saying with a clip from the radio frequency. So when it says, wait a minute, that would mean the ghost would have to be a time traveller. Then the room went silent as I elaborated this. Think about it. The opera singer repeats every 19 stations. For a ghost to respond to us within a few seconds of when we ask a question, are you dead? What year did you die? The ghost would have to know what the question was, travel to the radio station, influence the DJ to play a song or a specific word to the exact moment that we ask it, and to make sure it aligns with our questions that we haven't asked yet. Bear in mind, most songs are 3 minutes long. So and that doesn't account for when words are split between multiple stations to make this happen. The ghost would essentially have to travel back in time and manipulate events perfectly, even though multiple people are asking different questions that are crossing over with each other. So as I'm saying this, I says what I think's really happening here is I think we're having audio apophenia, we're finding patterns in random noise, and a particular lady shouts. She interrupts me, and she says, "Stupid. I heard stupid." And then someone says, "That's meant for you, that is. You're stupid." And then they all kind of fell into this fallacy of now 12 people in this room all agreeing that they heard the word stupid and they're pointing at me. Even though, I'm just going, face palm, what am I doing? And it was at that point I never considered to be Frank's boxes or like ghost boxes ever seriously again. And that, I think, will draw me to our conclusion tonight. I think we've covered lots of different topics of time and time travel and all different ways it could be interpreted or played with. My name is Kristian Lander. You'll find me on X, you'll find me on Facebook, you'll find me on YouTube at youtube.com Kristian Lander and my website kristianlander.com. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me here today. I'm not feeling as great as perhaps as I could. I've went a bit of a ramble. I've mispronounced words terribly. I'm ever so sorry about that. But thank you very much for listening. And Caroline, any questions out there?
Yeah, hi. Thanks ever so much, Kristian. It was a brilliant talk. I love this type of stuff that I don't cover very often. So I learn a bit more. And time travel is something I'm going to have to read up on a little bit more because, whether or not it's just you're looking for patterns and things or anything like that, seeing the guy with the mobile phone looking thing totally blew me because I didn't know that was out there. So for me, that was the first of seeing that. So, right, let's skip through these questions. If anybody has any other questions that they would like to ask, just pop them in. And by the time that I've got to the bottom, hopefully we'd have got them all done.
Okay, so I was going to say, before we do the questions, what was the responses to people's places where they wanted to go back in time?
Right, so this is where I'm starting.
Okay.
Mr. Blease says, I think I'd pop to the summer of 1931 to watch Hendon air display. If I couldn't get back to 2024, I'm not sure that would worry me.
Oh. Anyone else?
Ben Emlyn Hughes said, I'd like to go to Roswell. I'm sure that's a big shout from a lot of people, actually. Imagine being there with your mobile phone. You'd have time traveling confusion with other people, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
Darren Hudson said, I'd like to go to Borley Rectory to assist Mr. Price with his shenanigans and investigations. I think you'd have a lot of people joining you on that trip, Ben. What an incredible experience. Do you know, I saw something, I think it was via ASSAP a couple of years ago, that somebody was reenacting Borley and he was making it into some kind of AI animated. Kieran's nodding his head. Kieran, can you unmute so you can tell me who it was? Can I unmute you? Ask to unmute. So
I'm not sure.
Can you remember who that was?
No, but I do remember it, and it was quite good. It was very creepy, but whether or not it was entirely accurate, they said it was. It was an AI-generated content, all right, but I can't remember.
Oh wow!
No,
did it. Sorry.
Yeah, so I probably need to go and have a look on that somewhere. It's somebody that's known through ASSAP that was creating that, and it was really kind of eerie how accurate it was. You might as well stay unmuted, Kieran, because you're the next one. It says, I have experienced some long-term haunting phenomena. Do you want to talk on that one?
I'll go for it.
Thanks. Well, it's a combination of various techniques that I used, but I've experienced a lot of mediumistic things and been in contact with ghosts and spirits mediumistically. So I've witnessed all sorts of tragic events. So what I would like to do is go back to those times, actually, and see whether I could change history by changing time and turn a horrible outcome into a good one. To stop people committing suicide or committing murder or someone being murdered, that kind of thing. I'm not sure it's possible, but I'd like to do it for simple, human, compassionate reasons.
Fascinating.
Thank you. That's a very unselfish response. Thank you. It was good.
Thanks.
Um,
Absolutely.
I didn't have time to type because I was too um, getting people in and things.
Sure.
But touching on what Kieran said, I think it would be quite fascinating to go back and be around Jack the Ripper time, so
Oh
that you
yeah.
could be a silent witness watching out the windows where you knew he was going to be, and could come back with your photographic evidence on your
Yeah,
smartphone.
that'd be interesting. Yeah. Well, would
Yeah,
they?
well,
Yeah, because would he know you were there? Because how good was he? Was he quite a stealthy individual? And he kind of knew these like the prostitutes, of course, were along dark alleyways or whatever.
yeah,
Oh,
definitely. That would be a good one. Out the top part of the window on the route, you'd be able to know if it was Kaminsky or not.
and what camera
Yeah,
would you take?
mind-boggling. Hey,
What camera
say
would you
again.
take? What camera would you take?
Oh, I'm an
Not my
iPhone
phone.
girl, so it's always an iPhone. The camera's a bit dodgy, so you're probably better off with a different brand for anybody else. Right, so um, Kieran's also said he's been interested in history, so he'd like to go back in time to witness the actual events unfolding in front of me. Yeah, it's exactly what we've just said there. Jackie Tonk says, I think a lot of priming happened. Maybe as if someone told you were holding a mobile phone, then we would interpret the image as such.
Mm.
Yeah, can
Yeah,
understand that.
yeah, for sure.
And Kieran agreed and said, yeah, it could be a pocket notebook. Um, right, now this is going to make you giggle.
All right, go for it.
Aisling said, I'd like to go back to Christian's talk where I joined late and I was getting changed while listening and told my cat Rona and the audience that I had chicken for her for tea.
Ah, I
And
remember
she said
that. Yeah.
that she cringed at the time, but found it really funny now, especially since Kieran left it in the YouTube video for
I
her to
did.
cringe at
I did.
all
Yes.
time. Yeah. So her and the cat are infamous.
Yeah. Sometimes moments like that, if you cut it out, it kind of ruins the flow. Because obviously it affected people beforehand and afterwards. It was comedy gold, so I left it in there. So
Kieran states that small compact cameras were common in the 1920s. They were known as bellow cameras as they unfolded with a concertina leather type cover. I can remember I had one of those as a child from my grandfather. So yeah, I think he brought his from that age time as well. It was a brown leather, and the smell of it is quite, you can think about things from the past and it holds specific memories. I have the
mm,
smell of that old leather every
mm,
time now I'm thinking of it. It's yeah, excellent. They were quite tiny. They fitted into a box about the size of this, didn't they, Kieran?
yeah,
Yeah. So I
That's
mean
right.
it does look a little more older rather than it being quite the modern thing that we saw on the screen that you were showing us. Um
was that the chap who's like on the bridge in the 1940?
yeah, I,
Yeah,
I think I think that was, yeah, the compact camera.
yeah.
Um
It's,
Go on, carry on.
no, I was going to say that's such an interesting picture because he's not only he just looks so strikingly different to all the other reporters and the people around him that it's. I don't think clearly he's even meant to be the focus of the picture. I think clearly a reporter was there taking a photo shot, and he just stands out. Just obviously he's got those glasses, that kind of modern hairstyle, the M on his chest, he's got that kind of the jack on. It looks excellent, just that standing out. How different he is.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if anyone actually researched the T-shirt and see if they can pinpoint a logo that's been in our timeline.
Well, there's the Mariners, which was like an ice hockey team. I think they disbanded in '39, and there's what was it? There's sorry, NHL team, sorry, but they kind of disbanded by that point. But they might have just had a residual T-shirt or jacket of their time. Sorry, it's a jumper which going on, but it's a very modern, striking design. How we today would have the kind of letter logos on our shirts, but perhaps back then perhaps wasn't as replete.
No, definitely not. Good evening, Rob. Rob says, "Hi everyone, happy Sam." I can't pronounce that word.
So,
Saman.
Sarwin.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not good at that word. Sorry for arriving late. That's forgiven. He said it looks like his article about Bold Street time slips will be in the next issue of 14 Times. It is relevant to tonight's webinar with
Fantastic.
the lamppost porn. Yeah,
Fantastic.
actually, reading it, Rob. I do enjoy your articles. back in 1995, my camera was a brick, and so was my mobile phone. So, 1995, definitely anything. I think was it a Nokia N910 or something? Was that one of the first ones?
I can't remember the one I got.
610?
Yeah, 610.
610, yeah.
I've got one of those.
610.
I think I've still got one in the drawer.
Yeah, and then you have those. Then it went to the posh ones where you had a flip out, didn't it?
That's right. Yeah, very Matrix like.
Yeah. What you were saying about this is the future that people are actually saying is going to happen, and they give you their AI creations of the future. I can remember watching in Star Trek, and the doors went, and I thought that's never going to happen in my timeline. A door opening when you walk through it, and the way that they sat and they touched the screen, and I sat and I thought, how can people understand this far in advance what is possible? That blows my mind because I watched it as a kid and thought it would never happen.
Yes, I don't know if you also know this. If I watch the movie Minority Report with Tom Cruise, on the DVD extras, there's something really interesting. They actually got together with a number of science individuals, regard people who worked at Lexus, people who worked at some tech companies, and what they thought that 20 years would look like. So the whole kind of vision of the movie is actually based on what all these different manufacturers were hoping to create in 20 years' time. And of course, we've actually got to that point now with touchscreen computers, doors that open of their own. It kind of replicates that whole Star Trek effect, walking towards doors that opened. I think it takes science fiction to give a vision of what the kind of the technological side will be. You have to have a vision before people can go, how do we make this happen? And then that's how it's done. Well, in Star Trek in the 1960s, of course, famously, actually they had people at the side of the doors actually opening and closing them manually, of how it would look. But now, of course, automatic doors are all the rage. That's standard.
Yeah, definitely. I walk up to a lot of doors now and just wait, and then I suddenly see that there's a pull sign and think, failed that initiation test. Yeah, but you expect it now.
Yeah.
Ashlyn said her first mobile phone had a pull-out aerial and took 8 rechargeable batteries. Oh my gosh, how long ago was that? Was that like a car phone back in those days with the pull-up aerial? Yeah, definitely. The typical Dom Jolly one where he sat on the loo and it's ringing.
Oh yeah,
the big one. Hello?
I'm in a library. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think she had a head start on my Nokia. I wasn't quite posh enough to have a mobile phone till 1996 or 95, I think mine was. Let's have a look down. Kieran says, moving on, many of the things we do today with Photoshop photographers used to do through various darkroom techniques, matting out figures and inserting alternative images, as well as combining multiple images. Before I hand this over to you to answer, I can remember there's a picture when I was a child, and I think it was what they would call a double exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a picture of me at a beach when I was a child on this boat that was moored up. And there was 2 of me. And I was convinced for years I had a twin. My mum and dad separated us because there was 2 of us.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, I certainly had a double exposure on a particular photograph that I had, and I was convinced that it was like, this is the first ghost photograph, it's real. Yeah, that was really interesting. Again, it was myself, and it was someone else who had moving through a door or something, and it kind of, they had like, there was them, and there was like a ghost version of them too, beside me, and I was normal, so that kind of always fascinated me how that was done. But like it's double exposure, or it's between the frames as the lens closes. You can make interesting effects happen.
Rob's moved on because we've moved on to the Mandela effect. He said, "Oh no, not the Mandela effect. I am super skeptical about this, and I believe it is a means of the lady making a name for herself to earn money."
Yeah, I mean, I kept it kind of brief. It's only because it kept coming up in conversation when I was looking at time travel, and again, it's only because I have my own experience with it. It's just that I'm going, okay, is there something to this? I don't generally put much stock into it. I've seen all the various topics that are out there, from like, there's the genie with Shazam, there's the cornucopia on the Fruit of the Loom thing. They're really fascinating, in fact. The cornucopia one, actually, on the Fruit of the Loom story, no one believed for many, many years that was ever the case. It turns out back in like the 1920s, in a really, really early edition, it did have that on it. So that's intriguing, the fact that was covered up because the Mandela effect story existed. They went back and erased their own time history. Very interesting stuff, but I don't really put much stock into it, no. But I think there is a kind of consensus between people. When people agree with it, they don't ever want to let go of the tribe feeling of that. They like to keep in their little group, in their little majority, as it were, and they don't want to change their history. They don't want it to go back to perhaps how it really is. They don't want to accept that it's different to how they perhaps have interpreted it.
Thank you. So, apologies, I'm not going to pronounce your name correctly. Ugluk says the Devil's Hour has some nice takes on ghosts of the living and alternative timelines being recalled. It's on Amazon Prime if anybody's interested in that one.
Yes, yeah, I watched the first series of that. It was really good.
Yeah. I've never heard of that one, I don't think, so it'd be good to go and have a look on that one.
Yeah, it's got the chap who played who was in Doctor Who, the last male Doctor. I forgot what his name was now. But yeah, so yeah, he's like the main character of that. That kind of deals with a fractured timeline. Yeah, it was that. I never really got. I'm assuming there's a second series out, but the first series didn't kind of explain the technology about how it was being done, but it was really intriguing.
You were talking about the vertical plane and that the messages were coming through from a spirit. That made me giggle because what came to mind was the Ghosts TV series where you've got the ex-politician who goes and types using his energy. He types out messages to the family. So
Right.
I think they've had a play on that. Have you not noticed that on the series Ghosts?
I've not watched that series. No, I'm aware of it, but I've not watched it. No.
Yeah, it's quite funny, but he takes all of his energy for about a week to type a sentence.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
If that's inspired by it.
Yeah, definitely. You'll have to watch it. It's being rerun at the moment on BBC.
Okay, good.
I'm not sure what this is in relation to, but we were talking about the case. I think it was to do with the vertical plane as well. Jackie Tonk says this case has parallels with Jeff the Talking Mongoose. Authors could create such an interaction to feed a book that they were writing.
Potentially, yeah. I could see that. I mean, Dr. Paul was at with Debbie at the ASSAP conference, the one that was recently Seriously Strange, and the amount of messages that were shared between Lucas, or rather Thomas, and Deb and Ken. I mean, number in the hundreds. Was certainly being recorded scientifically under advisement of the SPR, and those certainly exist in their logs too. And they're fascinatingly deep. They're clearly in Old English. And what was intriguing about that, for those who don't know, the speaker before that particular talk was this skeptical linguist, who of course is a very famous chap with ASSAP. And so I was in the kind of breakaway room after this talk happened, and he came to speak to Deb and to Dr. Paul about wait a minute, that I recognise some of those words, that didn't make much sense. So this structure was slightly different here, and he hopefully will be able to contribute to what the vertical plane research team are continuing to do with deciphering those messages into modern English.
Thank you for that. I'm going to skip a couple because there's quite a lot of new stuff coming through. Kieran said in Frank Herbert's Dune, I can remember that book, guild navigators pilot complex spaceships in order to fold space. That is traveling without moving.
Yeah, that's right.
Would that be the equivalent of a wormhole?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's they kind of use that kind of a wormhole-like tech. Yeah.
Yeah. Gladys said she couldn't see the video.
Oh, which one did you not see?
If you're still here, Gladys, do you want to unmute and tell us which one?
Can you see the video with us now?
Are they still here? Oh,
it might
quite a lot
be
of people that's left.
Okay, yeah, because it might just be that the video of perhaps the ones that I made full screen didn't appear to them. But I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think they've left now.
Okay.
Oh, and Ashlyn said it was just a video game series, so I think that was that one. But they've left.
Yeah.
Kieran said, can ghosts be not only reflections of the past like a stone tape, or could they be echoes of a future event that come back to us in the past and our future?
Oh, maybe. If ghosts do exist, I guess we all have some kind of theory or thought about what they are, else I don't think we'd be an ASSAP, or these kind of strange experiences of high strangeness. They possibly are kind of dimensional travelers, or perhaps they are observers from the future, perhaps there's some kind of tech that's happening in the background, or some kind of environmental phenomena that allows us to see through windows of time. I'm not sure. It'd be nice to think that perhaps we could get to a technological point of view how we could interact with things like this, but I'm not sure if we could get there. I still think we're dealing with something that might be a more natural phenomena when it comes to ghosts. If such experiences are happening, I don't really know. I'd like to think we could interact with ghosts in some kind of fashion. But again, you start opening all kinds of philosophical questions about, are they the living, are they the dead, are they in the future, are they in the past? And I still think we're trying to answer that question in any kind of sense. Well, I don't think none of us know yet.
No, definitely not. There wouldn't be the paranormal, would it?
No.
If we'd had an answer for everything.
No.
Martin and I were traveling to this talk we gave this afternoon, and he decided to get very deep with me about the reptilian part of the brain, which is
Okay.
your subconscious. And he was explaining that if you have received some information ex body, your reptilian part of the brain receives that first, which is your subconscious, and then it tells your body to have conscious thought.
Mm.
He said by the time that you've actually had that conscious thought within like point, zero of a second or something, 0.04 of a second, then it's already gone, it's moved by, and it's too late to comprehend. But this is, your brain then becomes the conscious, and to have you then seen something because you think that your subconscious has told you. I just looked at him and I said, well, okay, that's an incredibly intelligent thing to say, that it's really going to get my brain thinking. But what happens if you've got multiple people experiencing the same thing at the same time?
Oh yeah, for sure. For those people who claim to be experiencing ghosts, I would say probably the best advice I ever actually got was actually from CJ Roman. He says to me, "If you think you're seeing a ghost, you've got them in your peripheral vision, don't look at them, but just kind of squash your eye a bit and see if it moves, see if it changes a bit, and see if it changes, and then see if you could look it out the other eye, see if it does the same thing." And I think because you need to work out whether it's you perceiving it or whether it really is other people seeing it, because you might. The brain first registers movement as a kind of defense mechanism. Should we move or should we adapt to what is happening in our environment? So that instinct kicks in first. Indeed, the lizard brain part kicks in. How do we respond to this? And the first thing we respond to is shape and movement. And then you need to work out, okay, then you suddenly realize it's got shape, it's got a form, it's got a face, it's got a body. Is it something that's a threat? And if you don't perceive it that way, and you stop your thought there, can you sort of work it out? And then if you ask other people perhaps to do the same, if they're having the same experience, are they seeing that shadow figure in the corner of the room? I need to and if you are all seeing it, you've got something definitely strange going on.
Definitely. So I can understand the concept that your brain can trigger things that aren't there. I understand that totally.
Oh, all the time.
But when it comes to things like multiple experience,
I
haven't quite worked that one out. So we'll just go along with paranormal for being the response. As the previous comment about echoes of the future, Ian Liston Smith's reply to Kristian, I think he's applying it there.
Yeah, I think I fumbled the answer towards the end.
Yeah, don't worry. You've got lots of thanks here. Richard, Jackie, Ashlyn, great talk. Thank you. Bjorn, thanks. Bart Wallace, great talk. Kieran, in Ursula Le Guin's novel, The Left Hand of Darkness, there's a human used to predict the future by focusing on a single question. The catch is that you have to believe that the technique is not entirely relevant.
Oh wow, I've not read that book. That's an interesting concept.
Going on that concept, we've been trying that in one of our experiments when we go out and investigate, because sometimes when we're reviewing the Zoom of the recording that we've made before, if we have a set pattern of questions that we respond to, and we've got another Zoom going and it's hearing this one being reviewed, this one's recording the response to the question that's being asked on the review. We've had that before. So we're not actually speaking, we're listening to the first recording and then we're applying the same questions again from listening to that. And yeah, that's weird that we have that. So I don't know if it's the same as the technique that was in Ursula Le Guin's novel.
Interesting. Yeah, I get that.
Maybe.
I mean, the one thing regarding this particular talk, I mean, I started writing this maybe about 2 weeks ago. Again, as I saw that there was not a TikTok thing, it was like a YouTube Shorts popped up. It was about these people who were from the future, and I was like, what is that about? So I started logging those stories, and I started writing more accounts on what other things about time travel are there I could associate this to make it an actual talk and as a presentation. And I just, when I was aware that Halloween was coming, and I said to Claire, I says, hey, I've got a talk, it's ready. When should I put it out there? I mean, for a talk typically on a Halloween, this is not your typical one. I mean, most of them want more the ghosty stuff, more the spooky stuff on a Halloween. And I think actually it was actually quite revelationally different to actually not talk about typical ghost legends on a Halloween. And kind of break tradition, do a bit of time travel. It was quite an interesting one today. And of course, we've got more people have got to see this talk than normally would. This is still going out on YouTube. I can see it's still streaming out there, so it's actually amount of people watching this is really good. We've had like 60 people in here at one point tonight. That was really good. So in terms of our Zoom, I think maybe ASSAP are back in there with having some attendance with these talks. So it's been really good tonight. So.
Thank you very much. Just to finish off, Jackie Tonk says, in relation to the Borley Rectory, she said, could it be the one with Reese Shearsmith called Borley Rectory? And she said the film was written and directed by Ashley Thorpe. So that I'm getting the thumbs up from Kieran. So that's probably the AI one that we were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. And just before we go, your pal Alice, modern school of is it not linear? No past, no present, no future. So maybe no time traveling, just moving and shifting various versions of self.
Maybe that's how that landscape perspective works. How it's all happening simultaneously.
Yeah, could be. But that's it. Unless anybody else has any other burning questions that they want to open up with and open up. How many people have we got left? Yeah, we've still got a few left.
There's still 20 of us. That's all good fun. So who have we got coming up next week? I know you mentioned to me earlier the person who was going to do a talk. Who is that?
Yeah, we have Sarah Pilkington next week, and the talk is going to be called Dead Mountain, and it's on the Dyatlov Pass incident in February 1959 with a group of hitchhikers that mysteriously went missing.
Yes,
so that will be something a little bit different again. So you can join us 7:00 next week for that one. That won't be live, so that would just go back to our normal version of
that's correct
how we would normally but Kristian, incredible from you again. I love your talks. You're very enigmatic and engaging. Thank you so much for doing that for us. And that's it from ASSAP, and we will see you next week. So thank you ever so much for joining us. Take care and don't have nightmares.
Never.
Good night, everybody.